It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story, held close. Sir Keir Starmer greets Volodymyr Zelenskyy with a hug ahead of a crucial summit with European leaders tomorrow.
You have full backing across the United Kingdom, and we stand with you, with Ukraine, for as long as it may.
I want to thank you, people of the United Kingdom, such big support from the very beginning of this war. Thank you, your team, and I'm very happy that His Majesty the King accepted my meeting tomorrow.
Royal soft power. Mr. Zelenskyy will meet the King tomorrow in a show of support for Ukraine. Also tonight, not out of danger, but breathing more easily. Vatican sources say the Pope's condition is stable after a breathing crisis yesterday. Stopping fake news. Police powers to give more details about ongoing investigations to prevent dangerous misinformation on social media. And Charlie XCX wins Best Song at the Brit Awards. We'll be live from British music's biggest night of the year. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. The contrast couldn't be starker. Just 24 hours on from a disastrous clash between the Ukrainian president and Donald Trump, Sir Keir Starmer greeted Volodymyr Zelenskyy today with a big hug and a warm smile. The Prime Minister said that the UK stands with Ukraine for as long as it may take. Mr. Zelenskyy is in London ahead of a summit with European leaders tomorrow, a summit overshadowed by the possibility of his country having to fight on against Russia without the crucial support of the United States. Just to warn you, there is some flash photography coming up in tonight's first report from our political correspondent, Nick Martin.
You're gambling with World War III. You don't have the cards right now. You're not winning. You're not winning this.
Have you said thank you once this entire meeting?
The one-liners were brutal. The head-to-head now historic for all the wrong reasons.
Mr. President, is there no deal?
President Zelenskyy was in and out of the White House in just a few hours. By morning, his plane had landed in London. The beleaguered president's next stop, a hastily rearranged meeting with Keir Starmer. The motorcade swept past cheering crowds on Whitehall, through the gates of Downing Street, and straight into a friendly embrace with the Prime Minister. A hug, a handshake. The contrast couldn't be more stark. The message couldn't be clearer.
What's your message to the US President?
So much to talk about. So much to figure out, so much to do.
Can a deal be salvaged, President Zelenskyy?
As you heard from the cheers on the street outside, you have full backing across the United Kingdom, and we stand with you, with Ukraine, for as long as it may take.
Thank you very much, Keir, Mr. Prime Minister, having me here. And really, I saw a lot of people, and I want to thank you, people of the United Kingdom, such big support from the very beginning of this war. Thank you.
The world will watch this and see a very different relationship. President Zelenskyy on safer ground. Two men talking, not shouting.
This isn't just a show of support for Ukraine. It's about trying to find a way of repairing the damage caused during that meeting in Washington, D.C., with the Prime Minister now finding himself playing a central role in trying to bring Ukraine and the United States back together. Because without the support of Donald Trump, without the support of America, it's very hard to see how Europe can find a lasting solution to the Ukraine conflict.
They'll begin that task here. The stage now set for a crucial summit of European leaders in London on Sunday. And then a repeat of this. King Charles and President Zelenskyy will meet again tomorrow. This is Britain pulling out all the stops in an attempt to get a peace deal back on track. Nick Martin, Sky News, Downing Street.
Nick's still outside Downing Street for us. Nick, this all looked very convivial today, but it doesn't really change the overriding issues, does it? And what's planned for Zelenskyy tomorrow?
Well, it really was a tale of two meetings, wasn't it? Compare the meeting with Trump yesterday to the meeting that he had with the Prime Minister today, and they are just so very different. And it's interesting to look at the words that were used today. President Zelenskyy, after his meeting with Keir Starmer, took to social media and described it as meaningful and warm. I'm not sure he would describe the meeting with Trump in such a way. He then revealed that there were loans agreements signed between the UK and Ukraine, he says, to be repaid through revenue from frozen Russian assets, thought to be around £2 billion. So he's certainly got something from his visit today. But it's also about the optics. We've seen it there, the hugs, the handshakes, the smiles, the flattery. It just was so different to yesterday, and that was the point, the ability and the need to reset. Of course, tomorrow is all about the unspoken things, in front of cameras at least. And that is, the elephant in the room today was that there is still a huge problem, still a huge mountain to climb. And that is how we can get these peace talks back on track. Make no mistake, President Zelenskyy will be greeted with open arms by European leaders tomorrow at this summit in London. But there will also be an enormous amount of pressure on him. European leaders want a resolution. They are also spending money, especially those nations bordering Ukraine. Some of the options on the table, at some point, President Zelenskyy is going to have to re-engage with the United States. He's going to have to re-engage with Donald Trump. Some are saying he might even need to apologise. I don't know how he would feel about that. Compromise, at least, because diplomacy is often about short-term pain for long-term gain. And so there is a huge problem still, despite the scenes that we saw here on Downing Street. There is still a huge problem, an unresolved issue. United States needs to be brought back into the mix, and the talks tomorrow will be focusing on how the United Kingdom, European leaders and Volodymyr Zelenskyy can achieve that. Certainly, it would have been reassuring for the Ukrainian Prime Minister to be here today. He has had a very, very tough 24 hours, but he has many, many tough months ahead of him if he can't strike a deal which brings the United States back into the fold.
Indeed. Nick, thank you. In Ukraine, support for the president remains high following the shouting match with President Trump in the Oval Office. But the continuing losses on the battlefield weigh heavily on the country. And along with the sinking realisation that the US will probably not help, there is a recognition they need more support from the West. Sky security and defence editor Deborah Haynes reports from Kyiv.
The human cost of war. They mourn the death of a 23-year-old soldier. A private tragedy as well as a very public sacrifice. Valery is one of tens of thousands of Ukrainian men and women who've given their lives to fight against Russia's invasion. At an expanding cemetery in Kyiv, the faces of the dead tell the story of this war. Each one killed defending their freedom. It's something Ukraine and its people aren't willing to surrender, regardless of the threats from the White House. Out with his baby son, Nikita says he stands by his president after Donald Trump berated Volodymyr Zelenskyy at the Oval Office.
Yeah, it was hard to hear it and to realize it, but we were with much harder things before. I really hope the Europe will awake and do much more and maybe replace the US support.
There is genuine outrage here, though, at the US president's language.
I feel shocked because we are accustomed, the Americans are our allies, and it was very, very rude. I feel sad, but we will continue to struggle. We have no another choice.
Here in Kyiv, there is a sense of unity and defiance, not panic and defeat. This is a country that has already defied the odds so many times, fighting Russia's invasion. It's not about to give up in despair, even in the face of such extraordinary hostility from its most powerful partner, the United States. A veteran herself, Olena lost her son and her husband to the war. Yaroslav was killed in 2022. while Vladimir died in 2016, 2 years after Moscow first invaded. She described how she learnt from her brother that her son was gone.
Коли я подивилася в його очі, в нього покотилися сльози.
I looked into his eyes and tears started rolling down his face. The only thing he managed to say was, "Sis, forgive me." At that moment, I just screamed, "Tell me this isn't true. This just can't be happening."
Просто кричала, скажіть, що це неправда, цього просто не може бути. Я не знаю, як описати.
I don't even know how to describe what I felt. It was just emptiness inside me, pain, despair, refusal to accept it, confusion.
She has a tattoo of her boy on her arm and has a message for the world.
Ми дуже виснажені цією війною, але ми
We are exhausted by this war, but we are ready. We are prepared to fight for our country, for our land. But we need help, the help and support of the world.
Але нам потрібна допомога. Допомога і підтримка світу.
Donald Trump says he wants the killing on both sides to stop. It's a goal Ukraine shares, but only if it comes with a just and lasting peace. Deborah Haynes, Sky News, Kyiv.
Police want the freedom to release more details of some ongoing investigations to prevent misinformation on social media. They say they should be allowed to say more when a tipping point is reached and accusations of a cover-up could result in violence. It follows the Southport attack in July, when misinformation about the attacker snowballed on social media, leading to riots across the UK. Charlotte Leeming reports.
Last summer's UK riots were fuelled by disinformation. Just hours after the Southport knife attack, false rumours spread rapidly online about the perpetrator, Axel Rudakabana, that he was a Muslim asylum seeker who'd been on the MI6 watch list. Strict laws prevent the authorities disclosing certain details before a trial, so it doesn't prejudice a jury. But 3 national police bodies are now calling for a change to these laws to allow more openness between them and the public.
I think the scales of justice should be balanced more. As I said, we live in such a world now where, and again, the justice laws haven't caught up with how much information is available online that the public can now read and see it. You can no longer wait for a trial to start to get the actual facts. Some of the inaccurate facts are being posted online, and policing needs the ability to negate that very quickly.
The police body's plea comes as a review is carried out into what can be published during an ongoing criminal investigation. They want reform and a more even playing field with social media, saying the current approach is unsustainable, pitting public safety against the right to a fair trial. In our view, we have an analogue contempt process that is not surviving contact with the digital world.
Earlier this week, Merseyside's Chief Constable, Serena Kennedy, told a Home Affairs Select Committee that in the aftermath of the Southport attack, she wanted to dispel some of the misinformation in the public domain. She wanted to release some personal factual details about the suspect, including his religion, but the Crown Prosecution Service advised her not to.
It's really important that the balance is right because, of course, the police have got a role in protecting the public, and that's at the time of the investigation, but also ensuring that the administration of justice is followed properly.
The case of missing woman Nicola Bulley in 2023 also highlighted the damage caused when inadequate information is released. Conspiracies and cover-ups were rife online. And Lancashire police were later criticised for failing to call the investigation a critical incident and releasing personal information about the 45-year-old. It's an unenviable position for police to be in, sworn to silence while social media fills the void. There's a delicate balance to be struck, with justice itself at stake. Charlotte Leeming, Sky News, Liverpool.
The chairman of FIFA's Committee of Referees has told Sky News that abuse of referees has got worse, partly due to social media. He was speaking at a meeting of football's rulemakers today, examining the laws of the game.
This probably became worse compared to my time. At the time, the social network were not existing. Prefer is hard to deal with them. Personally, I ignore them, so I have no social network. And that's why I live very, very well. Different is the matter of the abuses towards referees, particularly in grassroots and youth football. This is something that we need to consider.
Hollywood is gearing up for the Oscars tomorrow, but Los Angeles is still recovering from last month's devastating wildfires. Not far from where the red carpet is being laid, communities are still reeling from what happened when the fires tore through parts of the city. Our arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer reports from Los Angeles.
A memory, now ash. This is the reason Oscars weekend feels out of step this year.
This is the work stuff that was all in the garage that the EPA has pulled out in phase 1.
2 months ago in the wildfires, prop master Adam Jetty, his wife and son lost their home.
Even coming back into the neighborhood is really, really hard if you're coming back to what it is, which is a disaster site. You know, the whole neighborhood is gone.
While he waits for his insurance to pay out, he can't walk away from this, even if he wanted to.
Immediate aftermath was, they were saying there was 23 times the amount of lead in the air. Like my house was 1946. We're talking about asbestos in the air. We all have to keep working in order to support ourselves, in order to have our health insurance, in order to be able to move forward and rebuild. And yet, like, the only thing you want to do is just, you know, sit there in misery.
Before displaced residents can even start to figure out how best to rebuild, they're having to clear hazardous household waste, things like bleach, paint, pesticides from every property.
And that's to stop the chemicals going into the air and into the ground. And all of this has to happen before they can even think about bringing in the heavy machinery to clear the wreckage. It is unimaginably tough for those who are trying to figure out the next steps.
Is this all one order right now?
It's compounded an existential crisis the city was already facing.
I hate talking about our damage. This is relatively small, but you know, the fire came through, lit on the roof, some embers blew on the roof, melted that skylight and fell onto the sets.
Wes Bailey's company has been renting out equipment in LA since the 90s. In recent years, work in the City of Dreams has dried up.
Everybody used to say last year, they would say survive till 25. So I'm coming into this year that just got destroyed with the fires.
First COVID, then strikes, and a streaming commissioning boom becoming a distant memory.
We don't want to become Detroit, you know, and have the auto industry go away. The fires were, like, I think, the catalyst to really get people to say, we've got an emergency here.
For glossy reality show Selling Sunset set around high-end real estate in LA, production has only just resumed.
Have you had a lot of phone calls with clients, friends, I guess, who've
I've
lost
had
everything?
Many very emotional phone calls. I mean, I'm 30% therapist right now, 20% attorney, 20% contractor, and 30% real estate agent.
While things seem bleak, there's still optimism.
I would bet anything that the Palisades will be one of the most desirable areas on the planet to live in 5 years. The houses will be stunning, fireproof, beautiful architecture.
But that's a long way off. For Adam, anything he can salvage has become special.
To be able to pull anything out of this wreckage and like have it, it's so meaningful. Clearly it didn't take our pets and it didn't take our family. It just took stuff. But even just some of that surviving is like, it really, you know, it means something. Yeah, it really does.
Buried in the ashes, a lesson in what matters to those who keep this industry going. And it's not red carpets or golden statuettes. Katie Spencer, Sky News in Los Angeles.
Now, people say they value local museums, but many fear they may be forced to close in the face of falling visitor numbers and rising running costs. A new research has found 3 in 4 say the sector is going through the most challenging time they've ever known. Sky's Emma Birchley reports.
In museums like this, history comes alive.
When it's making that whooshing noise, that's when the water would have been put through.
A chance to learn about the kind of steam-powered pumps that first sent water across the capital from this West London site in the 1830s. But like so many others, the London Museum of Water and Steam is walking a financial tightrope.
opening this museum costs about 400,000. It's likely to cost us a bit more in the next year. Yeah. But that doesn't include all the maintenance, all the building works. Those things are all project work on top of that. We rely an awful lot on volunteers to help us do this. You can see how shiny this engine looks. It doesn't get like that by itself.
And this museum isn't the only one struggling. Nearly 3 in 5 small museums in the UK fear closure, according to new research. Almost 2/3 believe visitor numbers have been hit by the cost of living crisis, and 3/4 are worried about the future of the sector. It's taking a long time to get visitor numbers back to pre-pandemic levels. Small museums like this one need to find ways to get people through the door. And this tiny tourist kiosk with its mini posters and pamphlets for independent museums all around the country is part of a campaign to encourage people to consider small days out, whether on their doorstep or beyond. In fact, achieving that goal is vital for their survival.
People say they value their local museums. They're a really important part of their community, but they've really got to back that up by supporting their local museum, by visiting or donating. In the past 20 years or so, about 500 museums have closed, and those museums are not going to come back. Their collections get dispersed, their buildings get dilapidated, so those museums are lost forever.
This museum has just been given £2.6 million by the government, money that must be used to repair the rundown area where one of the original pumps sits. While elsewhere, it's down to the volunteers. It's all a juggling act, reliant upon goodwill to keep it going for the future, so children like this can learn about the past. Emma Birchley, Sky News, West London.
To the biggest night of the year in British music now, the Brit Awards, which are being held at the O2 Arena in London. And success for singer Charlie XCX, who has won Best Song for her hit Guess. Well, Sky's Debbie Ridgard is there for us. Debbie, tell us more.
Yeah, so the awards has been celebrating British music and international music tonight. Fresh from winning 2 Grammys, Sabrina Carpenter actually opened up the ceremony this evening with a medley of her hits. She actually became the first international artist to get a Global Success Award. But really the main talking point has been about keeping music and a career in the arts accessible for people in the UK. And actually the Rising Star winner, Miles Smith, has mentioned this in his award speech, and he had this to say.
To the biggest venues in the country and around the world, if artists selling out your arenas and your stadiums started in grassroots venues, what are you doing to keep them alive? And my third, to the industry, to the execs in the room and to the people behind the scenes. Are we building careers or are we just chasing moments? Because moments fade and careers take time. So please stick with artists past their first viral hit. Please stick with artists past their first tour, because it really matters to us. And moments, they fade, but careers last forever.
And this was actually echoed as well by Ezra Collective when they picked up their award for Group of the Year, who actually, as a jazz group, they started in the smaller clubs, and they said they wanted to keep those places open just to keep music accessible for people in the UK. The award winners as well include Jade. That is her first solo award for Pop Act, and in that she actually thanked her former group Little Mix in her acceptance speech. As well as that, Charlie XCX, as you mentioned, won Song of the Year for her song Guess with Billie Eilish.
Debbie, thank you so much for that. Debbie Ridgard on the red carpet there for us. Well, let's get the latest sports news now with David.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
I needed someone to look over my plans, so I went to a man who's got plenty of experience working behind the scenes in football.
What is it you think these mentors would bring? Do you think that's going to be a difficult role? Do you think the families or the players will want to hear it?
A lot of educational people coming out of college, coming out of university are going into the system. And I have nothing against that, but that leaves a massive void of experienced ex-professional players. If you look at Sir Alex Ferguson, Ancelotti, Guardiola, Harry Redknapp, they talk about the mentors in their life. Former players will understand the difficulties that these kids will find at the back end of their time in the academy.
So playing that back, people who've had experience of what it's like when you don't make it would be able to help people through that experience. I think that makes sense. What would the mentors encourage these kids to do?
The mentor can be, that little bit of glue between the football club and the families. Parents give up a hell of a lot, Richard, to help the kid get to where he wants to get. And a lot of the times they are as disappointed, if not more disappointed, than what the kids are when they're released.
How many mentors do you think it would be?
Well, I think in the first year, you're looking at around about 90. We want to put in place a system that looks after their education and their life after football. All the clubs run a BTEC scheme. It's remarkable. The system has almost 100% record of BTEC passes. We've spoken to Richard Jones at Bryanston School about clubs having teachers come into the academies and teaching in classrooms. The kids will relate to the academy as a football area, not an educational area.
What you mean is having a career outside of football.
So from 14 to 16, a mentor would come into the family. They would go to the schools and see what your strengths or weaknesses were and prepare the kids at 16 if they're taken on as scholars. Educationally, they might be able to go on to do A-levels and then go on to university, or they might be more adept to working outside. They might fancy being a tradesman. Not all kids want to be in classrooms.
What you're focused on is the people who don't and won't make it as professional footballers, is that right?
We would set a league up. Instead of them coming out at 16, they have then trials. So they have 3 months to try and find another club. But also in that period, they've had this big kick. They've then got to sit down and take their GCSEs. We would say they don't need the trials. They can go into these colleges and universities and play in a football competition, a league, which would be competitive. People from non-league and lower league could come and watch these kids at their age progress. So they have a chance and an opportunity to stay in the game, but also to regurgitate them back into football with an educational programme alongside it.
I just want to talk about some of the practicality points of what you talked about. You talked about 90 clubs having a mentor.
You start at the under 14s.
Under 14s. And so obviously that would grow over the years, right? So you'd have 90 the first year, 180 and so on. Have you got any estimate of what the cost of that would be?
I would put it at the cost of an average Premier League fullback. If you look at the sales within the system now, the academy has become big business. There's more sales now of academy players than ever before. We could hit those transfers, people coming out of the academies, on a percentage either from club sales or from agents who are making, again, a lot of money. There's no price on looking after these kids, in my opinion.
I don't think anyone would doubt that looking after kids, particularly the ones that are experiencing not achieving their dreams, is a tough thing. As with all of these things, getting hold of that money and making it happen is the art of making the possible. Doesn't that mean that...
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by columnist for The Independent, James Rampton, and broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. Amongst the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Sunday Mirror, not quite in as yet, but their headline is "We've got your back." That's Sir Keir Starmer's comments on meeting President Zelenskyy. We'll be back, and the papers will be there when we come back. Do stay with us.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin. All alcohol products, not just wine, will have labels warning of liver disease and the link to fatal cancers.
These are crazy.
It's an industry worth around €14 billion a year. That's why Italy sees this Irish plan as such a threat.
It's always instructive and occasionally entertaining to hear what Donald Trump has to say on the issue of Brexit.
She's got her own way of doing it, that's okay.
The job takes me to every corner of this island. The rioting stemmed from a horrific daytime stabbing attack at a primary school in the city centre. The scale of the rioting and the destruction it caused is pretty much unprecedented here in Dublin. Jerry, any comments on the judge's decisions? Do you feel vindicated, Jerry? This is the end, the somewhat chaotic end, of a 52-day trial. Micheál Martin could be set to head back to government with the Taoiseach Simon Harris. Are you confident that you can now return as Taoiseach?
I'm cautiously optimistic and excited.
A mystery press conference hastily called. Leo Varadkar strode out and didn't disappoint.
I am resigning as President and Leader of Fine Gael effective today.
The people here sometimes feel they're somewhat neglected by the Irish government, to the extent that this place is sometimes known as the Forgotten County. The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks, but none have ever been found. If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland. Sky News, get the full story first.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
We're rolling.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
You're watching Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. But first, our top stories. Sir Keir Starmer has welcomed Volodymyr Zelenskyy to the UK with a hug ahead of a crucial summit with European leaders tomorrow. Vatican sources have said the Pope is breathing more easily and his condition is stable, but his doctors remain cautious. Charlie XCX has won Best Song at this year's Brit Awards. You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with columnist for The Independent, James Rampton, and broadcaster and psychotherapist, Lucy Beresford. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, royal welcome for Zelenskyy after White House meltdown, writes The Observer. The Telegraph pictures both Sir Keir Starmer and President Zelenskyy and has the headline, "You are welcome to number 10." "We've got your back" is the Sunday Mirror's headline. The Mail hits out at President Trump saying, "Now stop the state visit for bully Trump." The Sunday Times says the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, unlocks billions for Kiev and UK defence. The Sunday People also has the meeting between Sir Keir Starmer and Zelenskyy at number 10. And they're off to Benidorm is the Stars Splash. That's in reference to Brits flocking to the Spanish hotspot for the Cheltenham Festival. Intriguing, huh? We're joined tonight by economist for The Independent, James Rampton, and broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. Welcome to you both. Let's start with the only story in town, and Zelenskyy on British soil. The Mirror has that photo of the hug that Sir Keir Starmer extended to the president of Ukraine, in stark contrast to his reception and the basic ejection from the White House when he went to meet Donald Trump.
Yes, despite what the Star would have us believe, this is the only story in town. I must say I'm quite proud to be British tonight, and the contrast, as you rightly point out, between the reception he received in Downing Street and the vile treatment he received at the hands of Trump and Vance on Friday, which just infuriated me. It was so despicable the way they treated him. I think these are lovely headlines, actually. We've got your back, says the Mirror, and Hug of Hope, says the People. You know, the British people in polls recently have wholeheartedly backed our support of Zelenskyy. You could see big crowds outside Number 10 cheering him as he went in today, and I think that's right. He's fighting against a tyrant. Unlike what President Trump said, he didn't start the war. He's not a dictator. Trump just doesn't get it. He thinks people who die in wars are losers. He's got no idea of the sacrifices that Zelenskyy and his people have made. But we seem to understand that, and that's reflected in the very warm hug between them, and the fact that Starmer has offered to give him wholehearted backing and more money, which we'll talk about later. As I say, I'm proud to be British tonight.
And it was emphatic, wasn't it, the fact that Sir Keir Starmer actually walked out of Downing Street, walked a little way down to actually greet him.
It's a very proactive hug. And, you know, a picture tells 1,000 words. It's not even just the hug.
No, we're seeing
it's
it
the
there.
context of it as coming within 24 hours of what happened in the White House, that there is this sense that Starmer and Britain in general are making a decision as to which side we're on, because Trump himself has obviously made a decision that he's not on Zelenskyy and Ukraine's side, he's on Russia's side. So it's a
Well, he's actually said that he's in the middle, he's not on either side.
Well, that's completely rubbish. That is not what happened. That's not what happened in the White House. That was a very, very uneven-handed ambush of Zelenskyy, and in a way, people have been talking about Starmer meeting Trump a couple of days before and how very civilised it was and how very measured, and it didn't seem to, you know, escalate into anything, and that was thought a very good thing. This is a very powerful shift. Starmer is actually making a very distinctive gesture here. He's not just making this gesture for Vladimir Zelenskyy, he's also making this gesture for Donald Trump. Donald Trump will have seen this, and we're going to come on to the story about the meeting with the King. Donald Trump will be fully aware that what he thought was this amazing opportunity to be given a second invitation to meet the King, that's also going to be bestowed on Volodymyr Zelenskyy tomorrow as well.
Although it's not going to be a state visit. James, do you think that Donald Trump will be angered by that Zelenskyy will have an audience with the King tomorrow?
Yes, given that he's got an ego the size of Texas, he'll be furious that Zelenskyy is getting to meet the King. You're right, it's not a state visit, but it's very pointed, the fact that one of the first things that Zelenskyy said when he was in Number 10 is, I'm very honoured to accept the invitation to meet the King tomorrow, and therefore trumps Trump, in that he will meet him probably months before Trump comes over here. And given that Trump is so fawning towards the royal family, and he's also desperate to win a Nobel Peace Prize, which to me is completely bizarre. He's going around a very strange way if that's what he wants to do. But he will be probably infuriated by these images because he's a narcissist. But if he and Vance are so determined to put America first, Vance said in 2022, I don't care about Ukraine. He voted against the Senate's $61 billion package of support for Ukraine last year. They don't give a stuff about Europe, apparently. And so this will infuriate Trump because it seems that Starmer is stealing the limelight, and what Trump hates, he's getting the attention that Trump isn't. and is getting praise, which Trump isn't, certainly on this side of the Atlantic.
Lucy, I want to come back to your thoughts on the meeting with the King, but something you said earlier, that Zelensky walked into an ambush. Is that what you believe happened, that it was pre-planned?
The meeting lasted for a very long time, and it seemed quite civil for the majority of it. But there were a couple of really weird things. One was a member of the press pack who asked why Zelensky wasn't in a suit, and that felt like something that the whole room was tittering about. And I did get the impression that J.D. Vance was the person who upped the ante, and I don't think he would have done that unless he'd talked to Trump in advance. And we already know that whatever Trump says about being a mediator, people often talk about, oh, I hate being in the middle because I'm always having to, you know, sort family disputes out. But people in the middle love being in the middle because it gives them power. And I think J.D. Vance knew exactly what he was doing. He'd probably talked about it with Donald Trump before, and then they just literally upped the ante. It was a 2-on-1 pile-on, and it was really unpleasant to watch. And from a clinical perspective, it looked very abusive. There was a little bit of gaslighting, there was contempt, there was a lot of derision, there was just everything that made you feel uncomfortable. And it made me feel uncomfortable about what's happening right now. But then I think, OK, well, at some point, the Ukraine war is going to end. What is America's position going to be then? They're pivoting themselves to Russia. And I don't think those of us old enough to remember Reagan and Thatcher could ever have imagined that that is the direction that America would go.
But looking at the, well, it turned into a news conference that was on camera, and J.D. Vance sort of berated Zelensky for the fact that he was litigating in front of the international media.
But even the body language at that moment,
but
when
he was
says,
invited,
with respect...
they put the cameras there.
Absolutely. And anybody who starts a sentence with respect, you know they're going to say something pretty disrespectful, which he then goes on to say. And the body language was very much, I'm talking now, I've got the karaoke mic. So it was very,
and there
very
was one
controlling.
point where Donald Trump actually physically sort of pushed Zelensky.
And he said, you've talked enough. Going back to your point, I absolutely agree that it was an ambush. I think it was premeditated. The thing about the suit infuriated me because Elon Musk wanders around in a MAGA cap and a T-shirt, and he's praised for being informal. Zelensky is wearing this military outfit as a statement. He says he's not going to wear a suit until the war is over. This is a statement of solidarity with his troops who are dying in their thousands. Another thing that Trump doesn't get. Remember, J.D. Vance is running for the presidency in 2028, and it starts here. He's already putting out this, to me, reprehensible America First propaganda, and the way in which he triggered Trump by, first of all, saying that Zelensky was disrespectful in an extremely bullying manner, I agree, and then saying he was ungrateful. Those are the moments where Trump erupted, and it was almost like one paper called him a tech bro Iago this morning. I just thought that was a fantastic phrase, because he was like needling Trump like Iago needles Othello to make him explode. And that plays into Vance's highly right-wing, extremely xenophobic worldview.
But also
America's all that matters.
What is also very worrying is how many grudges they had. So they were complaining about the fact that they'd spent all this money. They gave an incorrect figure. They were talking about the fact that Zelensky had, perhaps ill-advisedly, gone to Pennsylvania to campaign for Kamala Harris. And they also complained about, and I think this goes to the heart of Trump's difficulty with Zelensky, is that he complained about the fact that Zelensky hadn't helped him when he wanted to find out what was on Hunter Biden's laptop all those years ago in the first presidential. So these are guys who've got grudges forever, but they're also incredibly thin-skinned. They wanted the gratitude, which, to be fair, is what Macron was able to deliver last Monday, which was what Starmer delivered on Thursday. Certainly diplomatically, perhaps Zelensky didn't play all the cards in his favour. In fact, he clearly didn't. But nevertheless, if you are saying, you know, I am the king, I'm Don Corleone at the moment, and you need to kind of bow down to me, you don't get given respect, you earn it. And Donald Trump hasn't done that.
What was also disgusting to me was that Vance was just repeating lies that are promulgated by Russian bot farms. For instance, you write about the money. America has given, very generously, £120 billion to Ukraine, not £350 billion, which was the figure that Trump used. It's also a complete lie that Ukraine is kidnapping people on the street and forcing them to be conscripted. It's a complete lie that Zelensky's been ordering propaganda tours for Western leaders to show the Russian devastation. Those are all lies that immediately originate from the Kremlin.
The main problem with this is that we're talking about that 40-minute meeting, whereas what we should be talking about is the fact that there is really only one person who has banged heads together and said this war's been going on for 3 years, it's been costing far too many lives and far too much money, and that is Donald Trump. Now, you might disagree with all of his technique, but he is at least the person saying, right, game changer, I'm in town, could we please do something? And Europe really needs to pay attention here, because it's our time now to step up and kind of get our act together.
Yeah. Lucy and James, thank you very much for the moment. We're going to take a break now, and coming up, the Sunday Times reports that WH Smith looks set to disappear from town centres as the company plans to sell its high street arm. Stay with us for more.
Times every day for the next 3 months.
Why have we agreed to this?
Raises many questions about many things.
Actually seeing people impacted, she was so upset.
It was powerful. They kind of couldn't believe they were being berated here.
Very much on my terms, I think was the subtext. News happens fast around Donald Trump.
It was a kind of wow moment.
Yeah, that's what it feels like, doesn't it?
It's Trump world, and we just live in it.
So, where next?
Follow Trump 100 wherever you get your podcasts. I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Do you fear a fourth indictment? Does your government owe an apology to the British home children?
Great to see you.
Does your government owe them an apology? The fact that they were intercepted, does that indicate a military weakness on the part of Iran?
No.
Free, wherever you get your news. There's no doubting the strength of this hurricane as it roars through. You can feel a devastating power. It had been a difficult night in a deadly storm.
Bang, bang. You can hear it hitting the windows.
Our houses are okay.
It's depressing.
As bad as all of this is, it could have been much worse. Today, this land they call sacred is at the heart of America's electric car revolution.
To me, it's a sacred ground.
The white gold rush is a race that Biden doesn't want to lose. I've covered some of the biggest stories in the world. Donald Trump, 45th President of the United States, it would appear is about to learn his fate.
Escort coming out!
San Quentin houses America's largest death row. They rarely allow cameras onto the condemned block.
James Matthews, Sky News. I want to be treated equally like everyone else. It's one step closer to getting out, to getting off death row.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News.
Hey, James.
Are you diminished by claims that you're a racist?
Question?
Mr. Musk, has your ignorance and ego cost Ukrainian lives? Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding. What do you call him, sir?
He's from Sky News. He's from Sky News. He's entitled to ask me questions.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah.
The battlefield is outside the barricades. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
It's really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. Well, a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club.
4 more years!
Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, economist for The Independent, James Rampton, and broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. Let's take a look at the Telegraph again, but this time the story towards the bottom of the paper regarding US commitment to Europe. And Kemi Badenoch is saying that it can't be taken for granted, James.
Yes, and I imagine she wrote this with gritted teeth. She says, credit where credit is due, and even if you don't support the Labour Party, I think you must pay credit to Starmer. He's been so steadfast in his report. But she rightly says, you know, that we are now going to have to play a leading role as the transatlantic alliance that's gone on since the end of the Second World War seems to be collapsing before our very eyes. It's down to us and the French, as the two most powerful military nations on this side of the Atlantic, to take control of this, because otherwise, you know, the prospect of Russia reneging on a ceasefire and then thinking, the Baltics look quite tempting, NATO members, EU members, that is just too horrific to contemplate. So I agree, and I never thought I'd say this either, I agree with Kemi Badenoch. We do have to take a leading role because the Americans have proved so incredibly selfish and narrow-minded about it. So I think it's right.
That's
completely,
the scary thing.
You can't trust their word. We talk about Putin being untrustworthy, but what about Trump?
And she says that we have honest differences with the Trump administration, which must be resolved, because there can be no doubt that we're living through the most dangerous times we have seen since the worst moments of the Cold War.
Well, this is really interesting that it's on the front page of the Telegraph, because what people have been saying in the past 24 hours is, so what is Nigel Farage saying? Why hasn't Nigel tweeted? And why, you know, the people who you think would be very closely aligned with Trump haven't said anything at all. So here we have, smack on the front page of the Sunday Telegraph, Kemi channeling me a few minutes ago, where I said that, yes, Europe are going to have to really get their act together. And as
she
I
knew
say,
you were going to say
I
that.
think that's right. I think, well, she and I were very similar. I think that the problem is that we've got a really difficult crisis right now. When that's all done, as I said before, when the Ukraine war is over, where does that leave America? America will have pivoted to America. America will have pivoted to Russia, partly possibly to maybe cleave some, you know, space between Russia and China. I don't know. It's obviously part of Donald Trump's sort of geopolitical cat's cradle that he has going on in his mind. But the idea that we as allies of America, that we share a lot of intelligence with America, for example, are we actually going to want to have that level of special relationship again if this is how he treats his allies? You know, he may very well have said that he didn't bully Zelenskyy, but he was the one who called him a dictator. And then when he was challenged about that in Starmer's press conference, he says, did I say that?
Yeah.
I don't think I
Next
ever
question.
said that. So it's just literally, I think he's been reading Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. He is just in the now, in the moment, which is why, funny enough, I don't think it was pre-planned, but I do think the ambush was very much because J.D. Vance knows.
It was planned by
how to
Vance,
make, yes,
who is a real snake in the grass, I think, and was ready to pounce. And he knew what would trigger Trump. That was the thing.
So basically, we've got this Lancaster House event tomorrow. We've got all the heads of Europe coming, or the majority of them, and Canada, and Turkey, and they're all going to have to sing from the same song sheet. But the interesting thing is, people often used to say about Europe, you know, America would say, "Who do I phone?" Who is going to be the person who acts as the bridge? We know that Keir Starmer is hoping to present himself as that person, but you can imagine Emmanuel Macron thinking, no, that role should be me. I got to touch Trump on the knee. It should be me.
Well, I'm also still in the EU,
I think Trump was
yeah.
mightily impressed by the invitation from the King. Just to say, Nigel Farage has tweeted about what transpired in the White House. Yes, he said the spat in the White House last night is regrettable and will make Putin feel like the winner. But this is not the end of the story, far from it. A peace deal is essential and Ukraine needs the right security guarantees. So he has commented on that.
That's very true.
Is this the same Nigel Farage who in 2014 said Putin was the world leader that he most admired?
And also that
he's
has
got a real Achilles heel
on
there, I think.
speed dial. You know, this is somebody who could actually have come. I think my point is, yes, I mean, I think you can't call it a spat, it was a diplomatic earthquake. But Kemi Badenoch is on the front page of the Sunday Telegraph, and that's my point, is that that's a much more a committed statement of intent than just sending out a tweet.
To the Mirror, photo, top right of the paper, Ghislaine Maxwell to ask pal Trump for a pardon. The full story inside, which you've had sight of, James. Tell us about this story.
Well, I know many, many libel lawyers will be watching, so I'm going to approach this story carefully, but it's slightly speculative, the Mirror story. It is interesting. According to a friend of Maxwell's in prison, there have been discussions amongst her and her friends about whether she should call on Trump, who was a friend of hers and of Epstein's, her former boyfriend, and, convicted child abuser, to ask for a pardon. And that, to me, I suppose, as we were just saying, nothing about Trump should surprise us. He freed every single person who committed crimes on the 6th of January, many of whom committed heinous acts of violence against police officers and law enforcement people. So if Ghislaine says, I'm your buddy, I wouldn't be at all surprised if you pardoned her. I think it would be a disgrace and a travesty of justice, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Speculative story.
Totally, yes.
This is not fact.
Hello, libel lawyers, yes.
Yeah, we've only got about 20 seconds, Lucy, just to talk about W.H. Smith vanishing from the high street, from Towns.
Oh, yeah, no, this is really sad. It's just somehow because it feels like an iconic brand from my childhood. In fact, I found £4 on the floor of Bognor Regis W.H. Smith when I was 9 years old, and I was allowed to keep it by the store manager. So it always has a special place in my heart. And I will be very disappointed to see it go the way of Woolworths and BHS.
And James, thank you very much. We'll see you in the 11 o'clock hour. Coming up next on Sky News at 11, we stand with Ukraine for as long as it may take, the Prime Minister's message.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
We're rolling.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.